Today I'm going to talk about remote viewing and whether or not it's real and valid, or whether or not it's all just so much conspiratainment bullshit. And so anyway, remote viewing is the practice of seeking impressions about distant or unseen subjects, purportedly sensing with the mind. In other words, ESP, extrasensory perception, clairvoyance, telepathy, what have you, whatever you want to call it. That's what it is. Now, a lot of people will just reject this sort of stuff out of hand without even, exploring the possibility. Their dogma, their, quasi-religion causes them to reject it. However, whenever you reject anything out of hand, then, you're obviously limiting yourself. So anyway, I'm going to go over it. I'm going to talk about the background and evolution of government programs centered around this topic. I'm going to look at some evidence for its validity, and I'm going to look at some of the arguments against it, and then afterwards, of course, I'm going to make some conclusions. So anyway, here goes. Okay, so let's take a look at some evidence that this phenomenon is valid. Ingo Swann, he's really famous, and he was part of the Stargate program. He discovered the rings around Jupiter. No one knew that there were any rings around Jupiter, and then he saw them in a remote viewing session, and then years later it was substantiated that there indeed were rings around Jupiter, which of course isn't necessarily determinative. That could have been just a good guess, but still, it's tantalizing. Then, Russell Targ's team correctly identified one of the kidnappers of Patricia Hearst. Now, this one's, in my mind, this one's kind of dubious too, because the kidnappers of Patty Hearst had some links to government mind control programs, according to some people. So they kidnapped Patty Hearst and then brainwashed her. Anyway, they supposedly had some links to government mind control programs. And Targ had some links to a guy named Sidney Gottlieb, who was the father of American mind control programs. And he comes up in some of the earlier videos I've done. So to me, that one's suspect because there's a direct link there between Targ and the kidnappers. Through Sidney Gottlieb. So that could have been fake. I think that might very well have been fake, that one. Nonetheless, they did identify one of the kidnappers of Patty Hearst, and they recovered Patty, and then promptly threw her in prison for 2 years until she was pardoned. But anyway, that's another story. In 1980, the guy named Joe McMoneagle, working for the CIA, helped determine how to capture a KGB agent that was communicating back to the Soviet Union, even though he'd been captured. McMoneagle said to look in his pocket calculator. Agents found the calculator concealed a shortwave radio, and he also predicted where Skylab, there was a space station the United States had before the International Space Station called Skylab. It crashed, and in advance he predicted where it would fall. Someplace, I think it was in Africa or someplace. The man was so successful that he was actually given medals for his work, won by the president himself. Now, if you know military guys very well, which I kind of do, you know that they take that kind of shit very seriously. Medals and decorations, and, you don't just give out medals to people for no reason. You just don't. But here's the one that really does it for me. Remote viewers, government remote viewers were used to determine the location of a crashed Russian plane in Africa. The remote viewer gave the latitude and longitude of where the plane was crashed. They went to it and they recovered the Russian plane. Jimmy Carter here in this video, I'm going to play it. He talks about it, although he doesn't attribute it to a government program, even though that's what it was. So here, let's listen to this.
One time we had a small plane go down somewhere in Africa, and we were not able to find it by surveillance. So the director of the CIA heard about a woman in California that was a medium or something. I don't know the title for it. And she gave him the latitude and longitude of the plane's whereabouts. We located the plane where she said it was. And that's the only time that I have ever experienced something that was inexplicable while I was president.
Now, that's a clip from a movie called Third Eye Spies, and I hardly recommend that you watch it. It's really good. You can get it on Amazon and where have you. I think you can even watch it on YouTube TV. But anyway, to me, that's determinative, because you can't just, to come up with the latitude and longitude of a crashed aircraft, I just don't see how that could be an accident. I just don't. But anyway, and then also a lot of folks took it seriously. The government's most successful remote viewer, I've forgotten his name, I should have written it in there, but he mysteriously died in Las Vegas. Of course, he was a very successful remote viewer, so I think if I were a successful remote viewer, I would spend a lot of time in Vegas. But anyway, he died in Vegas, and then years later, a Russian hitman confessed to killing an American psychic in Las Vegas, which, of course, naturally would have to be him. So obviously someone was taking this shit awfully seriously, because, I can't imagine that you'd send a group of hitmen into the United States to kill a psychic unless you thought that that psychic was legit. So now, cause for doubt, because I guess there is cause for doubt. They, after all, they did terminate the project. They stopped it. Well, they say they did anyway. But anyway, people who evaluated the research concluded that there might have been unconscious hidden clues being passed to the viewers, which might have tainted the results of the program. In other words, not conscious. They didn't deliberately give these guys, like, a cheat sheet, metaphorically, but, they might have just inadvertently tainted it by giving the viewers hidden clues. The report concluded that no usable intelligence data was produced in the program. David Goslin of the American Institute for Research said there's no documented evidence that it had any value to the intelligence community. So, why did they do it for 20 years then? And, of course, I've already given you some examples of successful employment of the technique. So, I don't know. Anyway, based upon their studies, which recommended a higher level of critical research and tighter controls, the CIA terminated the $20 million project in 1995. However, Time magazine stated that in 1995, 3 full-time psychics were still working on a $500,000 a year budget at Fort Meade in Maryland. So we're getting a little conflicting info here. So, conclusions. For me, the story of the Russian plane crash is determinative. I just don't see how in the world that could be a fluke. And so, unless Jimmy Carter, the president, is lying, or someone were lying to him, to me, that's determinative. Also, I've mentioned this. If it were bullshit, then why did they continue to program for so damn long? And then McMonigal, I've mentioned this too already. He was given medals and, all kinds of accolades. And if you look at him in that movie Third Eye Spies, he's interviewed pretty much in depth, and he talks about it. And, he seems pretty believable to me. And then And then another thing that kind of leads me to believe that they didn't really shut down the program was that just about the time that this stuff started to become common knowledge and become well known, there was a movie put out called The Men Who Stare at Goats, which mocked the program and made it look stupid and ridiculous. Now, to me, that indicates that the program might still be going on, and they just wanted to make it look stupid so that quote-unquote conspiracy theorists would be mocked and laughed at, and rejected. It's kind of a tactic I've noticed, trying to make a legitimate topic look ridiculous by association with some idiotic straw man they create. But anyway, why is there so much resistance to this concept? People have been talking about it for thousands of years. And people aren't stupid. If something doesn't work, eventually people catch on. Religion can blind people. But ultimately, after thousands and thousands of years, I just don't see how everybody can be wrong. Although it's possible. But think about it. In today's day and age, this is going to receive an awful lot of criticism and vehement opposition, because what would be the conclusion of this? If people could remote view, if clairvoyance were an actual phenomenon, then it would utterly destroy the scientific establishment. Their dogma, predicated upon philosophical materialism and atheism, would just come crashing down. And if atheism were refuted, then people might actually be able to get back on their feet and start living a sane life instead of drifting off into nihilistic escapism prompted by a lack of meaning in their lives. So that's why I think that this subject is important. It's important, and that's why I think the establishment is never going to accept it. But anyway, if you like the video, thanks for staying with it to the end. If you like the video, give me a like, give me a thumbs up, and subscribe to my channel, because I like making videos. And I don't think that my videos are stupid. I don't think they are. They may be kind of amateurish, but I think I put some good information in these things for you. So anyway, thanks a lot and adios. Bye.